if you look at a typical responsibility of a privacy program manager, I intentionally use the word manager because the same question someone asked me, what if I'm not a significant data fiduciary? So I may not need to, I don't need to appoint a DPO. So okay, don't appoint a DPO, but still you need to appoint someone who is responsible for managing the privacy program for an organization. So let's call them as privacy program manager, right? So, what are the important elements of a privacy program manager? Where do we start? How do we complete this journey? At least, how do you build this journey? Completing journey is too far. It's as I said, it's a journey where you need to know your milestones. You need to know what are the steps, and you need to know how do you build this. So the entire course is gonna almost revolve around what you see in the diagram, right? So it all starts with understanding your business landscape, understand your operations, who are your stakeholders, your employees, your vendors, your customers, all stakeholders, and your understanding of business is so critical, because without knowing your business you cannot become a DPO or a privacy program manager. Trust me, people jumping between different organizations struggle a lot if you switch to altogether new industry, and it will take you minimum 3 to 4 months at least to understand the nuances of the business, right? So you will be sort of a person coming from outside, and you might standing out in terms of understanding what happens in the business, right? It takes at least 3 to 6 months. I've heard people, it took me 6 to 8 months to understand this company, right? So that is usually a case in large organization, and if you are choosing a completely new sector, right? So just be mindful of the fact it's not just your privacy policy you will straight away jump off, but you need to understand the organization business, a very very important factor. How do you do that? Simple. Try to do a manual data inventory exercise where you will get an excellent opportunity to interact with all the business functions, understand why do you collect the data, what you do with the data, how do you manage it, what applications we use. All these elements will make you understand the business as well, right? So that's one important way. And second, it could be understanding the documented part of your organization process, right? So that's another way you can also be part of those all important meetings where you get an opportunity to be part of those decision making. That's another way you can understand your organization practices as well as your nuances of organization. The second is identify legal, regulatory, and contractual obligations. A very, very important step. Without knowing the second step, you cannot even think of implementing a program. So, identify what are your obligations, identify clearly what is your requirement, draw the boundary, draw the scope, then you can actually start building your program on top of it. So next important activity is your gap assessment. So this is what I said to someone before. Don't jump to audit, just start with your gap assessment. So gap assessment helps you to identify what you are lacking in terms of your data privacy law obligations, and what measures you need to take. Create a roadmap, right? That's an important element. Try to build a roadmap, have a 2 to 3 years or 3 to 5 years roadmap. This is an important journey. It cannot be done like you have a consultant, he comes with a set of policy procedure, he implements in 2 3 weeks, he leaves. Privacy, you are compliant to privacy, that's absolute myth. Okay, no one can make any organization compliant within a month. It's a journey where, like how you typically manage your security program, your privacy program will require its due time to build, right? So gap assessment is an important activity. Even gap assessment itself can take 3 to 4 months. Trust me, the organization which I did, it took me 3 months because most of my energy was spent to make people understand why we are doing this program, why we need a privacy program, what is personal data. So that awareness is missing, the cultural change is missing. So it's going to take a long time than we typically do for a European client, right? So that's another important point. The next is, once you know the gap, the next three set of activities which you see in the second row, it's all done sequentially, but at the same time it can be started parallelly, depends on the size of the organization. you can start building your privacy framework. You can either review, update, or you may develop from scratch, right? And you can start your personal data inventory, your data flow diagram. So inventory and data flow diagram is almost like the next important critical step. In fact, your data flow diagram should be the first, and then you need to do your inventory. It depends. Some organization directly go for your personal data inventory instead of going for a data flow diagram. Obviously, if you had this culture of data governance where the organization has clearly had the practice of having data flows, this is going to greatly help the timeline of implementing a privacy program, right? So you would have seen privacy awareness as a step usually done at the bottom layer, but I emphasize when you started developing a privacy policy, initiate your awareness, right? So you can conduct this awareness at different levels: leadership, the privacy team, plus the stakeholders who are involved. Start making them understand the importance of it. Implement controls which you have identified part of the gap along with your policy procedure, your technical controls, and start conducting your assessments like DPIA, privacy by design elements, and try to do transfer impact assessment, legitimate impact assessments, whatever is being called out by the law for different triggers. You need to conduct those assessments. Manage your data subject rights, manage your breach. These are two critical functions for the organization in terms of ensuring your data subject rights management and breach and breach notification requirements. And finally, if you have done all these steps, it's a matter of a journey where you need to continuously assess your progress with different metrics and try to improve your organization over a period of time. So this is a a typical roadmap for a privacy program manager. I gave you the steps earlier in terms of sequence. Those are 14 steps, but these are the broad set of action items. If you join tomorrow as a DPO, right? If you have to write what are my 10 steps for first year, these are the 10 steps that you need to start focusing upon, right? Any questions here?
Jay, on this DPI and PPD, uh, I'm just trying to establish the flow that we are saying that we have implemented the control. This is the gap assessment done, and then we are moving towards DPI. So trying to understand the significance of conducting DPI at a later stage after implementation of controls, not before that.
Okay, so actually, if you see the flow, this is for an organization where I gave a context of we're building it from scratch, right? So when you're building it from scratch, you would have ideally not conducted DPIA for when the process or product or services which had a risk associated with this, you would have not conducted DPIA for all of them, correct? So now DPIA is more of a retrospective activity. So part of your privacy program establishment, you will ideally first take care of your minimum policy procedure and technical controls, then now try to look at what has initiated in the past, what high risk activities that you have taken up, right? Try to retrofit with your DPIA and privacy by design. That was the intent. But typically this, once you have covered for the high risk activity, you will push this along with the previous step, right? Where you will typically do this whenever there is a new project, process, service, or anything product you're developing which has a risk associated with this, then that becomes a part of your development journey. It has to be at a very early stage, right? But this previous step and this goes hand in hand for when you are trying to build a program from scratch.